Right. Good evening, learners. Hope you're all well. We're looking to start soon, probably 2-3 minutes. Just going to give you guys some time to share and connect and jump in and get everyone on board. Remember, tonight we are looking at the grade 10 CAT syllabus. We're touching on module 1.1 to 1.5 with the theory. And we're looking at module 3.1 to 3.3 when it comes to the practical. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys just a minute or two to jump in, and then we'll begin. Okay, so good evening, grade 10s, and welcome to tonight's revision session. This is just gonna, breeze through everything that you should at this point be knowing as you prepare for your upcoming tests. Okay, so most of you will have this term, you'll have a theory test, again covering module 1.1 to 1.5, and then you'll have a practical test that should more or less be just on Word, because you just got into grade 10, you're just getting into CAT, and so it should just be on Word. Okay, so let's get into what we need to do. Let's add our slides up onto the screen. And guys, I'm going to be going through this. Please do leave a like, do subscribe to the channel. Comment from wherever you are joining. Let me know what region you are from, what school you are joining from. Tag people as well. And don't also forget to just leave, any of your questions in the comment section. I'll actually pop it up on the screen, and then we can take those questions from there if you do have any. Okay, so let's move on. We're looking at module 1.1, Introduction to Computers. And let's see what they're going through. Okay, so you can see in the contents, module 1.1 covers our hardware and software, our information processing cycle, our startup time when it comes to Windows, the desktop, common features of programs, saving work. They talk a little bit about the keyboard. The keyboard is an input device, keyboarding skills, etc. So let's get into all of this. The first thing they ask is, well, what is a computer? So they give us a few examples, and all of these will fall under the umbrella of what a computer is. So when you are asked to give an example of computers, you can use anything from laptops, smartphones, tablets, desktops. Those are all examples of computers. I see we have our first year. Yes. Welcome from Westbank Senior Secondary School. Shout out there to Westbank. Nice to have you guys with me here this evening. Okay, so you'll see at the bottom they mention multi-purpose devices. Now, when we talk about a multi-purpose device, it means it can do more than one thing. Okay, remember, as we go through, we should be talking about dedicated devices as well. Those are devices that can only perform one function. A multi-purpose device is one that performs many different functions. So if you look at your microwave, it doesn't just heat food, it can grill, it can cook things. So it is a multi-purpose device. My smartphone is a multi-purpose device because it can do more than one thing. Okay. And there they show us these are multi-purpose devices, electronic, and some of them over here are portable. So when we talk about portability in computers, please remember it's the fact that it works with a battery and it can move around. Now, I know some of you will think, well, my desktop computer, I can pick it up and I can move it around. That's fine, but does it work with a battery? Okay, if it doesn't, then it's not going to fall under your mobile or portable devices. Right, then In grade 10, the core terms are going to be things like, what is hardware? It's the physical parts of the computer that we can touch and see. Things like our monitor, keyboard, mouse, printer, and all the parts inside the box. Now, while I'm touching on that, what is this box called? We don't call it the box, the tower. We call it the system unit, because all the components that are needed, the hardware components that are needed to run your computer and operate it, are in that box. So this is why it is called a system unit. Okay, so this is what we call hardware. Remember now, hardware, things I can see and I can physically touch and feel. Okay, these are the physical parts of the computer. Don't forget that, because that is a typical question that does come up. And then with that, if they're asking what is hardware, sometimes they'll ask you to explain the difference between hardware and software. So software, these are the specific instructions given to the computer to do something useful. Things like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Adobe Acrobat. These are programs that do something useful. Okay, so please just understand the difference, first of all, between hardware and software. Okay, let's continue. So on software, they asked the question here, why a smartphone is also regarded as a computer. Now, when you think of your smartphone, what can your smartphone do? Can your smartphone do a lot of the things that your computer can? Yes, it can. Does it have a processor, memory, a hard drive, a motherboard? Yes, it does. So it's got all of the same components as you would find in a normal computer, right? Plus, it can do so much more, as they're mentioning there, so much more than just the phone calls. And for that reason, it can also be regarded as a computer. All right, moving on. This is one. This is one that does sometimes get the grade 10s. It is worth a lot of marks. Sometimes it can be 4 marks, 8 marks, depending how they ask it. But this is the information processing cycle, and you are always going to be, asked something around the information processing cycle. So the first thing you need to know are the 4 steps. Input. This is where we give instructions to the computer. Processing of data. This is where we are taking our data, and our CPU and our memory is busy processing all the instructions that we are giving it. And then what happens? What I see on my screen, that is my output. So once I'm processed, or once I have processed all of this, I'm getting that coming back to me through either printing it out or viewing it on the screen. Both of those are examples of output. And then what do I do? Well, hopefully, when you're done with everything, you save your work. And that's where storage comes in. So think of it like a normal assignment. What do? I get all my info, and then I begin to type it into the computer. That's input. As I'm busy formatting and changing borders, the CPU and the RAM and all those components are working. That's the processing of turning my data into something meaningful. And then what do I do with it? I have a look at it on the screen. I print it out. That's output. And then I save it. Now, whether you put output or storage first, it really doesn't matter. But the first two you should have in order. So it should be like input, processing, output, and storage. So you can see 4 questions. But when I explain each one of them, what happens? It becomes 8 marks, right? Now, sometimes they do ask you to even give examples. So like I just mentioned, input. What do you use to give instructions to the computer? You use a keyboard and a mouse, sometimes verbal instructions. So those are input devices. I already mentioned the processing, which is your CPU and your memory. What about output? That's our monitor, our printer. And our storage would be our hard drive or a flash drive. And please, grade 10s on that, do not say it's a USB stick. Please don't. It's not a USB stick, okay? It is a USB flash drive, or you just say flash drive. USB refers to the port that it plugs into. So please don't get those components mixed. Right, let's move on. As we talk about the information processing cycle, you can see here's an example of us adding a contact to your smartphone. Input is where I'm typing those details in. Processing is where the smartphone checks if somebody, like that is already added. Output is a message that's displayed on the screen showing that the contact exists or it's now been saved. And storage is where it's now saved onto the phone, whether it's onto the SIM card or onto the actual phone's hard drive. Right. Please remember, a computer, what does it do? It processes data into information. So what is data? Data is defined by two words: raw facts. That's what data is. Raw facts. Excuse me. Is having some juice here. It is piping hot here in Port Elizabeth. Okay. Information is when we've taken that data and we've processed it and we've turned it into something meaningful. So meaningful data, processed facts, anything like that would then define the term information. Right, and then we go into Windows. They started on Windows, so now that we know what those things are, we looked at Windows and our startup time, and they spoke about the booting process. And they mentioned to us the booting process. This is where the operating system automatically loads the computer automatically loads when the computer is switched on. So when you switch on your PC and it's like a black and white screen, and then at some point the Windows logo comes up, that's the booting process, where the operating system is now beginning to load. Okay, so please, that's another important term, the booting process. When I log on, what do? I use a username and a password to gain access to the computer and to my files and data. Okay, and they mentioned about our desktop. At this point, you should be very comfortable. Just know something, I guess, because they might ask you, about your desktop, your icons, your notification area, all these things. You just need to know where these things are placed. Right. Okay, then they mentioned the GUI. Please know what the acronym GUI stands for, which is your graphical user interface, and know what it does. What does it do? It helps us to interact with the computer using icons and pictures and taskbars and all these different things. That's why they're talking about a user interface. In other words, a way to interact with the computer using graphics. That's why it's called a graphical user interface. On the mouse, please know at least one or two of those common mouse actions: left click, right click, dragging, all these different things. Then they begin to introduce us to the Windows environment, and they mention that there's some common features in programs. Please again know at least two of these. There are things like your title bars, active bars, task bars. You can resize a window, and I'll go through these things when I touch on the prac. And then, guys, saving your work. Okay. Currently, work done on the computer is kept temporarily in memory. In other words, when you're working on a file and you haven't saved it, it's stored into a temporary area, right? And only when we save it does it go to storage. Okay. Please remember that. Storage is where we save things and it's going to remain there forever. Okay. Now, please, when we talk about permanent storage, when it comes to computers, this does mean that it remains there when we switch our PC off and switch it back on. It doesn't mean that it never disappears. Right, then the introduction to the keyboard, they just mention and they introduce you to the Qwerty Keyboard. Why is it called a Qwerty Keyboard? This can also be asked as a question because the first 5 letters on top is Q, W, E, R, T, Y, Qwerty, and that's where the name actually comes from, just indicating that it is a full keyboard. That's the main thing. So know where Qwerty is and what it actually indicates to you. All right, then input on a smartphone. Most of us know about this, so that's fine. This is important, your keyboarding skills. There they mentioned to us, you can see in bold, ASDF, right? That's where these fingers are supposed to be placed on the keyboard. That is known as your home row. So if they ask you, what is the home row on your keyboard? You're going to indicate letters A, S, D, F, and G, and then J, K, L, and our colon over there, right? So please, that middle row of letters, that is going to be our home row. Okay, right, and that's module 1.1. So if you have any questions on module 1.1, please just pop it in the chat. let me know, and I'll do my best to get that answered. Okay, so let's pop over to Microsoft Word. So most of you, by this stage, you have worked with Microsoft Word. And I want to go to the textbook to make sure that we have everything covered. I think most of you should be on this one. This is the Computers as Part of Everyday Life, the second edition. Second edition is where you should be now, because that's the one that's the most up to date. Let's go to module 3.1 and see what you have been doing. Let's make sure we're doing that. Okay, so they mentioned to us here about just meeting the work environment. So if we look at what we see over here, you can see on the top over here, we have our different tabs. We also have our ribbon. This whole section here, people, is our ribbon. Okay, so when they tell you to do something in the ribbon, this is where you're going to do it. This little button over here sees to minimize our ribbon, and then we can also bring it back again, right? So this is where we're going to now just have a look at this. Even when I minimize it, if I click on a particular tab, you can see it still opens. Now the icon changes to a pin. And when I click on that, it now remains in place. Okay, so if you do minimize the ribbon, don't get scared that it's disappeared and you don't know where it's going or where it is. It's still there. Okay, just pin it back in place and it'll be fine. Right, then they wanted us to know how to work with files. So let me just get through that. This is a blank Word document, right? So if I go File and I want to save my document, what options do I have? I've got Save and Save As. So it's important just to stop there and understand the difference. Save saves the changes to an existing document. Save As allows us to save a new document and an existing document in a different format and under a different name and even to a different location. All right. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to take this document and I'm going to click on Save. And you see what it does, right? If I go File, Save As, you can see it's doing exactly the same thing. Now, the reason for this is because this is a brand new document that has not been saved. So if it's a new document, it's going to do the same thing whether I click on Save or Save As. So I'm going to click on Save. I'm going to say I want to save it. Click on Browse. I want it to save to my desktop. And you can then see I've now got a location that I can save it to on the left. So like I said, I'm clicking on Desktop. Then I've got the file name, and this will give me a default name, but I can save it as anything I want to. Let's just say Test Tonight. And then I've got the Save As type. And this is important because they can ask you to save the document as a different type. And if they do that, this is where you are going to do it. Okay. File name, Save As type. So let's say I'm going to save it as a Word document. That's all fine to my desktop, and I click Save. So immediately this document changes over here on top because now I've saved it. So the name is there. Then when I minimize it, you'll see on my desktop, there is my document. Okay. Now have a look at this. When I go File, Save As, and I browse and I go to my desktop and I change the Save As type to Word 97-2003, watch what happens. Right? The name doesn't change, but the extension does. And I'll explain that. But now look, I've got two documents. There's testtonight.docs, as in DOCX, and the other one is testtonight.doc. Two files. You can see even the icons are different. Two files that have the same name, but they're saved as two different types, grade 10s. That's very important because in the test, you will most likely be asked to save it as a different type. Okay, so that's how we do that. Okay, so that's our saving. Save as, creating a document, then inserting symbols. let's right. So if we go to the Insert tab, remember when we go here, there's a Home tab. We're going to go to the Insert tab, and all the way over to the right, we are going to go to Symbol. So we click on Symbol, and then it brings up a list of default symbols. Now, most of the time, they'll ask you to go and insert a symbol, and they'll give you a code and a font. But let's just have a look at this. If what you're looking for is not here, click on More Symbols. And there we go. There you'll have a whole panel, a whole dialog box full of symbols. Now, what's important here is the following: the font, the subset, and the character code, because they will give you those details, grade 10s. So I would just go and select the particular font. Let's say, for argument's sake, it is Wingdings. And you can see how that changes. And they give me a code of, let's say, 120. And there you can see it highlights the exact symbol that I need. I click Insert, and there my symbol is in my document. So please remember, Insert, Symbol, More Symbols, and then there we go with everything. Please remember, font, your character code, and your subset. Okay, please remember that. Right. So that is our symbols. Speaking of symbols, if they ask you to insert the formatting symbols or to hide the formatting symbols, please, on the Home tab, here you'll see your whole section on font and a section on paragraph. These are probably, in fact, this whole ribbon area here under the Home tab is probably the most important one that you're going to be using to date. So under your font section, here we adjust the font type and size. We can make our font bold, italic, and underline. We can highlight it, change the color. We can even change the case, right? So if I've got a sentence that says, the man went to the shop to buy some bread, and let's say I don't put in my capitals, and I change this case to sentence case, you can see it's going to put that in. If I change it to uppercase, it changes it to all capitals. Okay, so these are just some of the things. Now, our formatting marks, or paragraph formatting marks, is this backward facing P over here. So it's under the paragraph or in the paragraph section. Click on the backward facing P, and you'll see between each of the words, there's a little dot. That dot indicates a space. Okay, you'll see here, if I press the space bar a couple of times, it's going to give me little dots indicating that each one represents a space. And then when the paragraph comes to an end, here I've got my backward facing P to indicate to me that is the end of the paragraph. When I go down, you can see that's a paragraph, that's one, that's one. These are all my formatting markings. So they might give you a document with all of these markings and ask you to hide it. You would just go to paragraph, click on the backward facing P, and those markings would disappear. Okay, it's going to be important to see that when you need to do some corrections. All right, so our font sizes, that's all fine. And that is basically module 3.1. Okay, so that's 3.1. Let me get back to the theory. I'm just going to move between the theory and the practice, if that's okay with you guys, and then we'll just continue as we go along. Okay, so module 1.2 dealt now with specifically software. Okay, and we're looking at application software versus system software, the operating system, and our application software. So what is application software? Remember, we said when it came to software, it's instructions. It tells the computer to do, or the program to perform, a specific task. So when we talk about application software, it's a group of programs that perform tasks for us as users. Now, here we can't use examples like MS Word and things like that. No, we are going to have to say things like or examples like word processing programs, typing tutor software. So we have to give examples of types of software, not specific programs. Okay, so do just make a note of the term application software. Then system software, these are programs or software that's intended to control, support, and operate the computer. So this deals with managing the computer as a whole, whereas application software does something specific within that system software. So I often say, when it comes to your phone and you've got WhatsApp, you can't have WhatsApp only on the phone. You need an operating system or system software to manage the phone. The phone can work without WhatsApp, believe it or not. The phone can work without WhatsApp. However, what happens? It cannot work without system software. Okay? Can't work without system software. So our two types of system software are the operating system, things like Windows and iOS and Linux. These are just a few examples. And then we have our utility software, which we're going to go into some detail on there as well. Right. Okay, so they give us some examples. Let's just have a look at that quickly. Right, and then we can see our examples like Windows 8, Windows 10, Apple Mac, Linux, Apple iOS for the phone. So whether it's software that's running on your desktop, laptop, your iPad, your tablet, your smartphone, these are all examples of the operating system. Why? What do they do? It controls the activities that take place inside the computer. That's what you need to tell us when we ask you that question. Also, very, very important question that comes up quite a lot. What are the functions of the operating system, or what does the operating system do on a daily basis within the computer? What does it do? It, number one, manages all the hardware and software on the computer. Secondly, it maintains security, right? Okay, I'm not sure why that other one isn't displaying there. And once it manages our hardware, it manages our software, it manages our security, it allows us to log on to the PC, right? So all of these things are just some of the functions of the operating system. Guys, very important one to know, okay? Then we spoke again about the graphical user interface with desktops, menus, shortcut keys. They mentioned a couple of other components. These are just things you need to look at and be able to identify them if you get a picture on this. One thing I will make note of is a dialog box. What is a dialog box? A dialog box allows me to have a conversation with the computer. So if I go to Word and I want to close Word, what does it do? It speaks to me and says, listen, hey, Colin, what's happening? Do you want to save the changes you made? And I'm going to say, no, I don't want to save the changes. And then it doesn't save it and it's over. Okay, so that's what a dialog box does. It allows you to have a conversation with the computer to choose whichever options you want. They just show us a couple more of those. And then these are some of the utilities that we have in the computer. Now, your utilities are built-in programs that come with the operating system. So things like your snipping tool, your calculator, these are all small programs that are built into the operating system. So please remember that. Here are some examples of, again, application software. This term comes up often, the Office Suite. So when we talk about the Office Suite, we are talking about one package of programs that is actually sold to you as a user as one piece of software. You can see there's 4 examples. There's 4 distinct programs that's inside the Office package. Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access. But it comes as one package. It's installed as one program, but it's actually individual ones that are there. So please, when they talk about the Office Suite, they're talking about the group of programs that are packaged as one and sold to the user. Okay. There's some more examples: communication software, desktop publishing, gaming software, web browsers, plugins, and please, there is a difference between a web browser and a website. Okay, big difference. A web browser is a piece of software. It's a program that allows me to navigate on the internet. So Google Chrome is a web browser. Google is a search engine. That's a site that I go to that allows me to search for information. But how do I get there? By using a browser. Opera Mini, Safari, Firefox. These are all examples of browsers. Oh, that's the end of the module. So now we're moving to 1.3. Before we do that, let's head over to the prac again. Let's go over there. Guys, if you're still with me, let me know in the chat. Okay, so 3.2 looked more at the formatting, right? So let's go to our document. Okay, now let me just type in some things. In fact, let me get an example here that we can actually look at. Where are we? 3.2, responsible use of computers. Okay, so we've got that in our sites. We can see it over there. I'm just going to zoom out. Right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this document and see what we can do, because 3.2 focuses on starting a new page, paragraph formatting, indenting, paragraph borders, and formatting with styles. All right, let me just give you a minute. Right. Okay. So the first thing they usually want you to do when it comes to your prac is to go to this layout tab. And some of the typical things that they do ask you are things within this area over here under page setup. So things like your margins. You can see with your margins, we have a set list over here, a default list that is there for us. But if there's anything specific that they are mentioning, grade 10s, you need to go down to custom margins. In custom margins, there I can go and type in exactly what I want the margins to be. And again, this is going to depend on what they are asking you in the paper. Okay, so you need to read carefully. The orientation, that is whether it's going to be portrait or landscape, right? That's changing the orientation of the page. And then also our size. Okay, those are usually the three most common things that are asked when you first do your prac. In fact, when you do your first prac in the next couple of weeks, and I can't believe we're heading into March, which means the end of the term is slowly approaching. But once that happens and you do your first prac, these are some of the first things that they do ask you. So margins, orientation, paper size. Now, starting a new page. Most of us, what do we do? We want to start a new page. We maybe get to this section over here, and then we just press enter and we go to the new page and we're like, yay, I started a new page. No. Okay. You can use on your keyboard, see if I remember this correctly, Control and enter, and you can see my mouse pointer moved. Now, why did it move? Because it started a new page. But what has it actually done? Well, if I go to my home tab and I put my paragraph markings on, it's created what's known as a page break. So it's broken the page at that point and pushed down onto the new page. Now, have a look at this. Mouse pointer's over here, and I'm going to do that shortcut again, Control. I'm holding down the Control key and pressing enter, and you'll see it goes to a new page. And there is my page break. Now, I can go do it differently. Right, I can go to the Insert tab and click Page Break. Doesn't matter which way you do it, as long as you get it done. Right. So that's that. Then they want us to look at line and paragraph spacing. Okay. So here you can see I've got all my formatting marks out in the open. If I want to hide that, I click on the backward facing P and it's gone. So now in this paragraph section, I've got if I click on the little arrow in the bottom right-hand corner, I have my paragraph dialog box. This will bring up things like spacing, indentation, and indentation is when we are creating a space from the right-hand side, right-hand side and left-hand side. But they'll give you those details, grade 10s, and you've just got to follow the instructions. So the main thing I will say to you is this: just know where to go. And then all you have to do is read the question and follow the instruction. Okay, so let me just cancel that. Let's go to our spacing over here. Now, this is our alignment section. So I can align my text. If I highlight all of this, I can align it to the left. And you can see it is highlighted at the moment. So that's to the left. I can go align center. And I can also align to the right-hand side. And I've got to justify alignment as well. So again, know where to go and follow the instruction. And then with my line spacing, you can see I've got a number of default options that I can select. If they give me a line spacing that I don't have here, I can go down to line spacing options and it will bring up this paragraph dialog box for me, and I can go and type in what I want there. So let me just go in there again. And you can see this spacing is the spacing before a paragraph. And this is the spacing after a paragraph. And this deals with the spacing inside the paragraph itself. All right. So again, guys, just know where to go as far as that. Indents will be exactly the same. We can also format with particular styles. Let me just see. And our borders. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I've just got all the stuff here with me. All right. So one of the other things they do ask is to insert a border. Now, if I look at my paragraph section, there's what looks like a little box with crosshairs in it. That's my borders. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom to borders and shading. Now, borders and shading brings up a few things. And only two I really need to, well, all three of them you need to know. But the first tab deals with just borders. The second one is when we're applying a border to an entire page or document. And shading is where we are coloring in that section. So if I go to page border and I say from the left, I want to select a 3D border. I want to select a particular style. You can see here, I can change the color. I can select how thick it must be. And I've even got art borders that I can choose. So let's say I'm going to apply it to what? The whole document, this section, the first page only, or every page except the first one. Also, once I've done that, I can also go into this section and decide which of the areas I don't want. Okay, so that's going to be important for the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to click OK. It doesn't look great, but that is our page border. Now, what if I want to apply a border just to this section over here? The first thing I'm going to do is just highlight that section. Once I've highlighted it, I then go to my borders and shading. I select the border I want, the style, the color, my width, and you can see it gives me a preview on the right-hand side. Then over here, it's important. I can apply it just to this paragraph. And once I do that, there's my border applied just to that paragraph. But have a look at this. If I go back in here, I can decide, man, I want to take the sides out and I only want the border running on top and at the bottom. And I'm going to click OK. And there you can see my paragraph border is only at the top and only at the bottom. All right. So let's go into this one last time. Borders and shading. That was our borders. We've looked at the page border. And now we've got shading. This is where we can apply a color of our choice. So let's say I'm going to apply blue. Oh, no, wait. There's blue text there. Let's say green. And you can see there's my preview. Apply to the paragraph. Yes. Click OK. And it'll apply to the entire paragraph. So guys, can you see how I am applying formatting just to that particular paragraph. Okay, right, let's go back to module 1.3. We are on track to finish by 7. All right, so module 1.3 dealt with our input output storage. It's looking at the information processing cycle in more detail. So here you can see the info processing cycle. We can see they start giving us an explanation of input output processing storage, and they've added communication because many times we share the information with others. We are emailing it, we are messaging it, we are going onto the internet, all these type of things. So communication is part of the information processing cycle. I just want you to process that and just have a look at that quickly. Right, let's continue. Okay, so here they tell us input is our data and instructions. Instructions can be any of these three things. Number one, a program. It's a set of instructions loaded into memory when you run the program. Commands given by the user. So when you're playing games and you are clicking on your control, you are giving instructions to that console. That's an input device. And it could be user responses, like when I want to save a document and it asks me, do you want to save? And I click on yes. Those are all forms of me giving instructions and input to the PC. There we can see our keyboard. Please, guys, know your useful shortcuts, things like F1, escape, copy and paste. Know those shortcuts. All right. Okay, we've gone through looking at click, double click. All right, this is important. Our ports and plug and play. So ports, there are ports at the back of a computer, and these are sockets used to connect. Oh, here's a nice word for you, peripherals. Okay, now peripherals are simply external devices that connect to a computer. Your printer, your monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, they all plug into these sockets. If they do that, they are classified as peripherals. So it's anything outside of the system unit that plugs into one of the ports. Plug and play, this is also an important term to remember and to know. Okay, plug and play is just telling us it is a way where we can now, it's actually a Windows feature where we can plug in our device and work with it. Plug and play. Plug it in and use it. No, major software or things like that that's required. That's why you can take a flash drive and plug it into somebody's PC via a USB socket or port over here. And then what happens? Windows picks it up and I'm able to use it. Okay. So please be able to define that feature. All right. Then they give us some advantages and disadvantages of wireless keyboards and mice. Okay. Wireless keyboard and mouse devices. So wireless, obviously, there's no cables, there's less clutter. Those are the advantages, but it works with batteries. The batteries can die, the keyboards can be stolen. Something can go wrong with a little dongle that plugs into your USB port. So those are some of the disadvantages. Please, with this, you need really only know 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages. Then on the output side, this is what we get out of the PC. This is what we see on our screen. This is what we feel in our hands when we print, right? Anything that comes out, anything that is a result of the processing, that becomes output. So one of them is our monitor, as I mentioned, right? And please, very importantly again, a monitor is measured diagonally in inches. In other words, from corner to corner. And the number one thing when it comes to a monitor, and this applies to a TV as well, that's how a TV is measured, right? When we talk about the number of pixels on that TV, sometimes you get that 1920 times 768. That relates to the resolution, which deals with the quality of the image that you are getting. Okay. We get output through graphics cards. These can be, separate graphics cards or built into the motherboard. But essentially, it's the image that's generated by specialized circuitry. That is what a graphics card is. And this allows those images to come through. And obviously, if you have a very expensive one, a very high quality one, you are going to get a very high quality image as well. All right. So important here is how it connects. It can connect via VGA, which is the old standard, HDMI, which most of us use today, display ports, Thunder ports, and even USB for specialized monitors. On the printer side, please, you only really need to know the difference between an inkjet and laser. Inkjet is cheap to buy, but it's expensive in the long run. A laser printer is expensive to buy, but cheaper in the long term. Your laser printer works with a cartridge called toner, which is a powder-like substance. Your inkjet printer works with ink that's sprayed onto the page. With a laser printer, the image is burned onto the page. Guys, that's all you need to know. That's really, really all you need to know over there. Okay, then our output over here. We can see that is just showing us the back of the PC and the ports that are there. And we can see the little green icon there indicates that this is the default print. In other words, this is the printer that when I click on print, that's where my document is going to go to. With printers, you can do three things, and you can only do this in a printer queue. So printers have memory in them. When I click print, that document goes into the printer queue in the memory, and I can cancel. When I go into that memory, I can cancel the document, restart it, or even pause the printing. Okay, so that's what the printer queue does. It gives me the ability to pause, cancel, and restart a print job that I've sent through. All right, then they spoke a bit about storage, talking about the difference between a storage device and a storage medium. Please, you can see the storage device is what I'm using to read the medium. The medium is the actual place where I'm going to be storing the data. Okay, by now you should know this. They just remind us about the storage capacities, what the different sizes are. So please, you don't have to memorize it, but it becomes something like that as you go through as well. This is important. Storage on hard drives. So we have hard drives that are inside our computer. We have external hard drives. Many people use external hard drives, especially those slim ones, right? So your hard drive is where all your information is stored. This is where you save your files to. The ones inside the computer are measured in gigabits and terabyte, right? Your external ones, some of them are powered via USB. Some are powered via, an actual plug point that you have to plug into to get power. But those are usually the bigger external hard drives. So just know the difference between your hard drive in your system unit and the external hard drive. Okay, flash drives. We are all familiar with our flash drives. And then this is one that always comes up, our health and environmental issues. Our RSI, remember what it stands for? Repetitive strain injury. And then know how to explain the term ergonomics. It's the study and design of the workplace and the equipment used in the workplace for the comfort and safety of the people. So an ergonomically designed keyboard like this one. An ergonomically designed chair that's there to make sure my back is supported in case I'm going to be typing for long periods at a time. And then you must know at least 3 or 4 of these health tips when using computers. So guys, simple things: sit correctly, be at the correct height, adjust the distance you are from the screen, make sure there's adequate lighting and ventilation and all these things. And then I think on this one, the last one is green computing, which is making sure that you are using your computer in a way that's environmentally friendly, that benefits the environment. So when I'm done here with all the streaming, I switch everything off. Avoid wasting paper. You want to recycle things instead of throwing it away. You want to use both sides of the page when you print, okay? Those type of things. That is using your computer in a way that benefits the environment. All right, so before we go on to that, let me go back here to the track again, and let's see what they've got. I think the only thing here is find and replace and your spell checker. Yeah, those are the main things. Okay, so the first one that they deal with is find and replace. So if I go to the home tab and I go to find and replace over here, you'll see this is the little dialog box that I get. So in the first tab, I can look for something. So I might be looking for the name, let's say viruses. Okay. And I can then decide what I want to do, find the next one. And there you can see the word is highlighted. I found it. When I go to replace, I can say I want to find viruses and replace it with just a bunch of symbols. Okay. I just want to put in some characters there. It doesn't matter what it is. When I go replace all, I'm actually just going to copy that. When I go replace all, you can see it's not valid. So I'm going to change it to viruses are us. I go replace all, and you can see we've made 4 replacements. And that's how I was able to find a particular word and replace it with another. All right. I can also go further, but I'm not going to go into that now and do a whole lot of other things to it. But for now, that's just how I find and replace words. Let's go do another one. And let's go look for the word plan. And I want to change it to the word complete. That's all I need to do. Click on replace all. It says there's 0 replacements. I say yes. No, that's fine. There they say we've made 2 replacements. Do you want to continue? Yes. All done. We've made 2 replacements. Finished. Okay. That is our find and replace. Let me just make sure, because that's 3.3. 3.3, copy, moving, deleting, finding, and replacing text. If we want to check our spelling, guys, let's just close this. And let's say I'm done typing out the entire document and I want to check my spelling. Let's see which tab is it on. Do we find it on the home tab? No. Insert? No. Where are we going to go? We're going to go to the review tab because we're done, right? So we go to the review tab, spelling and grammar, and I literally click on that. And if there are any problems, it'll bring it up. Now, this is important again. Please, you need to just follow the instructions. If they tell you, just check the things out, don't change anything, or only make certain changes, then you only make those changes, nothing else. Okay? Please, guys, just follow the instructions. Okay? We spoke about the punctuation marks. And I think the only thing I wanted to look at was the in dash and m dash, if I'm correct. If I am correct. Let me just double check here quickly, guys.